Hey guys, this is pharmacist Curtis Alexander. In this video, what I'm going to be talking about is 6 natural ways that you can improve your bone density. At the end of the video, I'm going to share my favorite one. It's, as far as bone density goes, to me, it's a groundbreaking one. I'll share that in a bit. But starting out, so the one kind of technique you'll hear a lot is that you need to do more weight-bearing exercise, and that is good advice. Anything from walking for some people to weightlifting for other people. One thing I do want to point out is that even more important than the weight that you're bearing is the force that your bones are bearing. And what scientists have found is that they found that gymnasts actually have a higher bone density than some weightlifters because of the force that their movements generate. Obviously, I'm not a gymnast, I'm sure you're not. But that doesn't mean that you can't do something like plyometrics or more explosive movements to create some of the force that we see in gymnastics movements. So again, weightlifting is excellent, you should do it, but force is even more important than weight. The second thing I want to talk about is vitamin D. There's a lot of misconceptions around vitamin D. I did a video on vitamin D. I used to supplement with vitamin D, I no longer do. So if you live in a northern climate, what I do instead is I use a vitamin D lamp. Now I go into all the reasons why I don't supplement with vitamin D anymore, but that does not mean it's not important for people. What I recommend though is to get sensible sun exposure, get vitamin D from natural sources, because vitamin D is mission critical to your bone density levels. So vitamin D, very good. I just don't get it from supplements anymore. The other supplement that gets touted a lot for bone density, and to some extent it should, is calcium. But during this time, it's got so blown out of proportion about calcium this, calcium that. We have to remember that calcium works in conjunction with other minerals and so forth, one of which is phosphorus, and there's magnesium, then there's vitamin D. So calcium is good. Calcium is beneficial, it's part of the bones, but there is such thing as getting too much. We see reports of people getting calcium deposits, those sorts of things. So again, calcium is beneficial for the bones, but it's not the be all and end all. So just wanted to point that out. The other thing that you can do to help your bone density is to cut out processed foods, and in particular grain products. What we have with pretty much all grain products in this country is they contain phytic acid. In case you're not familiar, phytic acid is basically a compound that has a bunch of negative charges on it, and in our body, positive and negative attract. So we have things like calcium that have a positive charge to them. Phytic acid can actually bind those, and we're not getting the calcium that we need into the bones. So you can see that, yeah, hey, I supplement with calcium, but I'm still eating a lot of grain products, so that phytic acid essentially neutralizes it and makes it ineffective, to say the least. So that's another big thing. The one exception to that is sourdough. If you're doing sourdough bread the right way, you're actually neutralizing the phytic acid, and what that means is that it needs to be fermented. I ferment my sourdough for 24 to 48 hours, which again neutralizes the phytic acid. The fifth thing you can do to help your bone density is to not overdo exercise. We talked about force, weight-bearing exercise, and force, how healthy that is for the bones. But we can take things too far, and you particularly see that in people who are marathoners, long-distance folks. They notoriously have some of the lowest bone density scores, just because there's a whole cascade that's set off, and I'm gonna torque a lot of people off who are big into the long-distance running thing. You do you, but we have to also agree that the evidence shows it's not the greatest thing for your bone density. Okay, and number 6, this is something else I've made a video about, and I'll link to it as well, but PEMF is my favorite. I haven't found anything that helps bone density more than PEMF. And just so you're aware PEMF is pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. There's all sorts of different types. I would caution you, if you want to know the best type, just reach out to me. It's one of those things where there's a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of people selling things that are inferior, but it is done correctly. It is very beneficial for bone density. In fact, NASA uses the technology for astronauts going into a zero gravity environment because they can lose bone density. PMF is used in that environment. So those are my 6 things. I think they're mission critical, and again, I think if there's any one thing you can do, PMF would be up there. Again, I talked about vitamin D. It is beneficial. I just try to get it from sensible sun exposure. Calcium is important, but we don't want to overstate its importance. There's other things at play. So again, we come back to the diet thing too, which we discussed. So I hope this was helpful. If you've tried any of these, I'd love to know your results. If you have any other ideas maybe that I should have touched on or that I missed, I'm happy to take a look at those. Just drop them in the comments. As I do more videos, I can't respond to all the comments, but I promise that I look at all of them. So anything you put down there, I appreciate. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope it was valuable. And until the next one, I will see you. Thanks.